Alright, another little checkpoint into putting the power pack together for the Sopwith pup. As you can see, I've got the actual model here because I did want to make sure that this whole assembly here would fit, which it does. So what I've done is glued the receiver to the frame sideways, as I said. Perhaps I should have glued it a little further to the left here, but it actually does fit, so it's fine. I've run the motor cable here along the side and then back up here to fit on the side. I've run the two servo wires basically under because they actually come out on the underside of the servos. Screwed the servos in so they're now firmly fixed in place, and then with a little twist tie here just packaged up all the cables so they're not dangling and getting in the way of everything. And as you can see, the blue light is glowing. I just made sure that I tested again. Test is always the rule. So I tested to make sure that everything's working, which we have here. We have elevator, rudder, and we have our throttle. So everything's good to go. The next step will be to actually insert it into the plane and then make sure, actually not quite, because what I need to do is to run a strip of Velcro here on the power base here, because this is actually where the battery is going to sit. The battery will be basically on, let's see which way up it fits best, but the battery's going to, so the battery will be inserted in from the underside of the plane through the hatch under there, and we'll actually Velcro onto this little piece here, which in a little bag of goodies over there, one of the last little things left is our little piece of Velcro for the battery. So that's going to go on here. This goes into the model, and the next step after that will be actually connecting up the servos to the control rods, which again, as I mentioned, because I've done this all last for, just because I ordered things late, it might have been better to do this a little earlier in the build, but it's still doable, so that's what we're going to do. The last little thing I did want to mention before I put this control pack, power pack, into the plane is the aerial for the radio. So the aerial on this radio does come out as a separate piece of wire, and if you watch, for example, RC reviews, you'll see that that the placement of an aerial on a radio control device, honestly, I don't even know if you can see that. Let me just see if I can get that in the camera and see if it can focus in. There you go. There's our aerial sticking out from the receiver there. And what I've done is I've actually pointed it slightly upwards, and I'm going to point it slightly upwards and slightly back. It's basically going to sit in on the inside of the fuselage, pointing towards the top. That gets it, generally speaking, as far away as possible from the motor, which is not too far. We can get it away with this little thing, and a little bit further away from the servos. I wouldn't want to run the aerial forwards, although for neatness purposes that might seem like the right thing to do, but it will actually tend to take it towards the motor where it could get some interference. And so by having a slightly bent aerial, hopefully I can get the best ability of the aerial to receive the radio signal and keep it as far away from any interference from the other electronics as I possibly can. So yeah, that's it for that little rant. So here's a revelation. First thing is I'm getting ready to install the controls. So connecting up the servos to the control rods, which is the carbon fiber control rods that we have here. And I was just looking at the plan and about how the control rods are connected to the to the control horns. So we have on the model here, we have control horns on the back of the plane. We have one for the rudder here, which we connected up when we were building the rudder, if you remember it. And then also the control horn here that controls the elevator. So this one's pretty straightforward. And what we got in our little package of goodies is 4 little wires that look like this. And the 2 longer, skinnier ones here, well, they're not longer, but they're kind of skinnier and bent over. These are the ones that actually go on the back. So they will hook into the control rods, clip on, and then we'll use the provided shrink wrap heat shrink tubing to connect those to the control rods. So that's pretty straightforward. These most likely will be connected into the control horns, which we see here. What's quite interesting, I don't know if you remember, but I had been wondering the whole time through this build about 2 little pieces that I couldn't figure out where they were going to be used. And that is these 2 little pieces here. And if you see, the label here doesn't sit that close to those 2 pieces, but is actually the label for those 2 pieces is 6. So following through now, I was just reading in detail the instructions, and this is one of the lessons for these. These instructions are fairly cryptic. So we've got to install the motor and power system here on the plan. So this is it over here, install the motor and power system. The trick with these is that because I'm building for a brushless motor, I have to figure out which ones of these don't apply and when to apply the brushless pieces. But a lot of these components actually apply. I'm going to read it out to you. So first, install the motor and power system. Take the brushed motor as an example. So we get how to build the frame for the brushed motor, which we replace with the 4 diagrams at the bottom. So effectively, the 2 diagrams at the top of the brushless motor install section get replaced with the 4 diagrams at the bottom. The next step is pretty much to connect everything together onto our power system here, and that gets us to the 4th diagram on this piece here, which makes sense, looks slightly different because we have the brushless motor on instead of the brushed motor, but otherwise we're doing well. The next step is where, you know, I totally missed it. I'd seen it a couple of times before, but I didn't get the point. So here we have, now let's see if I can see it here, get it for you. It's this picture here on the model, the one that the first one that my finger, not the one my finger is covering up, but the one next to my finger, I'm trying to point to it. And what that picture shows is 2 little things. One is it shows inserting our power frame with fully mounted electronic components into the model. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. What it also shows, and there's a little cutout at the top of that picture that shows how the two carbon fiber rods actually get connected to those servos. So those little brackets here will actually clip into the servo arms, which makes all the sense in the world. They're the perfect shape for just sort of slotting into the servos, and I might even video my attempts to do that in a minute. But what we also have is that little cutout picture at the top of the 2nd row of section 6 of the instructions. Shows those two little wooden pieces, number 6 from the frame, being, and it doesn't say, but clearly it must be, glued onto the ends of the carbon fiber rod. So effectively what we're going to do, we're going to take the carbon fiber rod here one at a time. We're going to take one of these and we're going to glue the rod in the little slot between those two ends. And that is how the wires will actually be connected to the rods here. Once you figure it all out, it makes sense, but it is a little cryptic, and so I'm hoping that this helps, that I've figured that out. And what I'll do is I'll actually pop these out now, attach these to the carbon fiber rod, and then show you how that looks when I connect the wires into the servos. And the other thing that I'm going to point out is, again, this is because we're doing the build at the end. What we're actually going to need to do to make sure that this works is to feed the carbon fiber rod in from the end of the plane, making sure not to lose the end on the back end of the plane. So I fed the carbon fiber rod through, so it's sticking out the slot in the side of the fuselage there. And I need to glue those ends on, those number 6 pieces on here, with this still connected on here. The reason why I need to do that is because I don't want to have to fish the carbon fiber rod through the plane. If I glued those ends on, then I'm going to have to push the carbon fiber rod through and somehow fiddle around to get it coming through that hole, which I'm sure would be doable, and I'm sure would be a frustrating 15 or 20 minutes to try and get that till it finally goes through the end. So we don't want that. So what I'm basically going to do, I'm actually going to attach, the trick is to get the length right. This is going to be interesting. I don't want to attach anything because I'm going to have to get the length right. So I'm going to have to feed that through. Basically, I feel like I want to put something, losing the camera on this. I feel like I want to put something on the end here just as a temporary measure to stop that rod from sliding through while I fiddle with the front. It'd be so easy to accidentally pull the rod while I'm fiddling with gluing something or attaching the servos, and pull it through and then lose the hole at the back. So I'm going to attach something to the very end of the carbon fiber rod. It's too long, so that's actually going to end up being cut off. In the end, the carbon fiber rod will end up being cut off. So if I attach something to the end to stop it from sliding through that gap, then that should be enough so that then I can do what I need to at the front here, glue on the number 6s, attach the wires to connect it to the servos, and then slide it back, mount the power base in, have it correct, and then finally the last step will be to attach the control rods at the end. As you can see, this would be way easier if the plane wasn't fully assembled at this point. Still doable. So for those of you who built the plane this way, hopefully that helps. For those of you watching the video, I'd encourage you to install all of this stuff way earlier, when the fuselage is basically pretty much, partially assembled with no wings on, no undercarriage, and probably before putting the base onto the fuselage would probably be a good way to do it. So we're doing it this way. Let's kick on. I'll join you back in a minute. Well, this is definitely a fine little process to follow through to get the rods connected. So as you can see, I've put the 6 pieces on the end of the rods here so that they're ready for connecting up to the servo arms here. And what I did, just to make sure that I don't accidentally pull those rods through the plane, is I just fixed a little bit of heat shrink tubing to the end of each one of those rods so that it can't pull through the holes. I'm very careful that I don't accidentally pull those through. So while I've just super glued those onto the end of here, I'm trying to figure out exactly how these pieces, so it's these two here, not these ones are used definitely for the connecting the elevator and the rudder, the back end of the plane. So these two pieces here need to be used to connect the servo arms to these. And you know, what seems fairly obvious is that it's a very fine to work with. What seems fairly obvious is that this little bend, sorry, the little angle that you can see on the end. I don't know if you can see it. Let me just see if you, yeah, oh, you got to see the little angle that you see. You've got a little angle and you've got a loop. So the little angle at the end fairly obviously slides in a, you know, the standard way that you see with most servos. And oops, where have I got that in the right place? So just try to show you that. So that kind of clips over the servo arm there. But what happens is that somehow this piece needs to connect into the loop in such a way that it actually is going to push. Now if I just push that wooden piece in over onto the loop here, all that's going to happen is this is just going to flop around and it's not going to actually push it all. I can't at the moment think of any other way. Honestly, I can't think, yeah, really it's hard for you to see that. I'm going to take an actual still shot and show you a couple of these things. But I can't think of any other way except for gluing that longer piece here. So I'm thinking that what I need to do is actually feed this wire through into this wire arm here and actually glue the longer arm up against the end of the servo of the carbon fiber rod against the piece of wood. Otherwise, I can't imagine how I'm going to get you know, you need a stiff arm push-pull. So the instructions are, let's say, silent on this point. The one picture that shows the servo arms here, sorry, the carbon fiber rods here, the one picture that shows how they actually connect into the servo arms, all it shows is the wooden piece here sitting underneath the servo arm, and it really doesn't give a good shot. It's not clear. I've even used my 2.5 magnifying glasses to try and figure out exactly what it's saying about how these pieces are used to connect that in, and honestly I can't figure it out. So what we're going to have to do is make something up. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and see what happens, and I'll have to let you know how it works and give you at least what I'm hoping for is I'll try this out. I'll come up with something that works and give you guys one workable option for how this can be done, and then wait for comments to see if anybody else has a better suggestion. So that's what we'll do.